Hey, welcome to 9394, a music podcast with me, Travis. Always awesome to have you with me. And it's always awesome to have my buddy Shawn McGhee on the show. He's returned. We once again met up on Zoom on a Friday night and had a few beers and talked music, which we recorded, and, other things that we didn't record. Not a ton of room for classic rock on this podcast. So I'm happy that Shawn wanted to discuss the legends, Plant and Page from Led Zeppelin, and their somewhat hard to find 1994 live album called No Quarter, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant Unledded. This is an album that I had not spent any time with whatsoever, so Shawn does most of the talking, but as he should, because he knows a lot more about this particular subject than me. Check out our conversation.
I see my friends coming right in many miles. So friends, you get some silver, you get a little gold. What did you bring me, my dear friend? Keep me from the gallows pole. What did you bring me? Keep me from the gallows pole.
Hello.
What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, bud. I'm good. How you doing?
I'm trying to get into the headspace where I can say that I'm surviving.
Are you drinking a electric Smurf? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah,
I should have guessed. It's become a regular thing now.
Yeah, man.
Tradition.
I love it.
Awesome. I'm drinking a Sheboygan Brewery Oktoberfest.
Oh, nice. So we're all out of Oktoberfest now.
Oh, we are too, but I learned this when I worked at the beer store in Philadelphia. They start stocking the Oktoberfest beers and all the pumpkin beers and all that shit in mid-August. So I'll just buy a bunch of that shit and put it in the back of my fridge and just not touch it until it actually makes sense. I mean, it's nice to have beer that's fresh, but I like to have the beer that I want that's appropriate for the season. I don't want to drink an Oktoberfest in 85-degree weather.
No, right. Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers. Cheers. Oh, so you're double-fisted. You've got a beer and a Blue Smurf.
Yeah, man.
What's the beer?
It's just a Stella.
Hey, Stella's nice. Stella's
yeah,
nice. Yeah, and it's widespread. It's easy to find, which is nice.
Easy to find, easy to drink. They go down too easy, maybe.
Yeah. So which album are we here to talk about today, brother?
So we are here to talk about Jimmy Page and Robert Plant's No Quarter, or Unledded. Are there different names for this album?
There's a lot that I'm confused about by this album.
Me too.
It's got two names. Or I guess the band is Jimmy Page and Robert Plant Unledded.
I think the band was just Page and Plant.
That's what I thought too. I don't know. And then the other thing I'm confused about is the fact that we've got the American version, we got some international version that's got some songs on it, but either way, none of this shit's on Spotify. I'm listening to it on YouTube, and today I realized that two of the tracks I thought I'd been listening to weren't even on the playlist that I've been listening to. So I'm like, okay, I'll look them up individually and listen to them that way. They're just not on YouTube. They're completely unavailable, at least the album versions.
Yeah, it's weird. I have the DVD in my attic, but I don't have a DVD player anymore. And so I had to do the same thing. I had to go on YouTube and re-listen to it. And I got to say, it was a lot of fun listening to it again. But it is strange that there are just the Rain song is on some versions, not on others. I found a version of Black Dog that was recorded during those sessions as well. Just
that's
really
cool. But
yeah.
as far as the album goes, though, I mean, that's not on there. None of that shit you just said is on there.
No.
Yeah, so that's what I've been working with as far as this being the supposed original 1994 version. But I don't understand a band working so hard to make their shit unavailable to people, especially when they're this famous.
Yeah, I was looking into why it's not on Spotify, and one thing that I came across is that the rights were owned by Universal, but I don't know why Universal would not allow it to be used by Spotify. So I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying it's one of the things that I read.
Yeah, I didn't read anything. I just leapt to conclusions because I was like, well, they took forever to get their shit, to get Led Zeppelin shit on Spotify. It was a big deal when they finally joined up.
Yeah.
Remember that? So I was like, well, they must be kind of adverse to that, I assume.
They made an actual studio album in 1998, too, called Walking into Clarksdale.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and that had some good stuff on it. It wasn't great, but there was some really cool stuff on there, and I thought that like Page's guitar playing was just, it was always evolving, right? He was a very imaginative player, but even his tone was really cool and sort of like watery, I guess is the word that I would use to describe it. Really cool sound, but even that, I can't find that record anywhere. And again, I have all these records and DVDs in my attic, but I have no way to play them anymore.
Time to buy a new record player.
It really is, man. I should have gone into the attic just to at least look at what my DVD has as the official track listing for '94.
Yeah, I was just working with Wikipedia. So I guess we're coming at this kind of loose, which is not how I usually like to do this, but Page and Plant are iconoclasts, I guess, doing things their own way and making us work around them. So we'll just kind of go with it. Now, were you a fan when this album came out in '94? Were you already listening to Led Zepp?
Oh, my God. So, like, Led Zeppelin is, if the rock and roll universe were a solar system, Led Zeppelin is the sun.
Okay. That's
I
right.
Remember,
it's coming back to me now. You've spoken warmly of them on the show before.
Yeah, they are my favorite band of all time. They're my favorite artists of all time.
Okay.
And, obviously a lot of that is situational. There's, some stuff that you recognize as probably not being an objectively good movie or an objectively good song.
But you love it anyway.
Yeah, you love it, and it brings you back. A lot of this stuff brings me back to a different time. My favorite album by these guys, we could go back and forth on this, but at least one of them is In Through the Outdoor.
Okay, when that come out?
That was their last album. It was recorded in '78, and it came out in '79 or '80. It's a strange one, right? It's got some stuff on there, a lot of synthesizers on there. But I'm drawn to it. Again, it's situational. It was one of the 2 records that they recorded and released while I was alive. Mm-hmm. So that album was new when I was like 4 years old when that album came out, and my dad bought it, and it was like on constant rotation in my house.
Yeah.
So that album is usually like a redheaded stepchild to most Led Zeppelin fans for whatever reason. But for me, at least, it holds a special place. I mean, that album, they were still touring, and I was alive when it came out, and it was all brand new music at one point in my life.
Yeah, and you can remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That record, it had the Swan Song label with the guy and the angel wings, and it used to freak me out. And the album cover was like, I now I understand it, but as a kid I didn't get it. It's like that bar scene and the guy's like reading a Dear John letter. That's actually a really cool, like some cool lore. Like there's like 4 or 5 or 6 different versions of the album cover, and they're all like the same picture but from a different angle. So you could buy the album 4 or 5 times and never get the same album cover. And what made it more difficult is the album, at least, was sold in a trash bag. And it just had Led Zeppelin Into the Outdoor stamped on it. So like you pulled the album sleeve out of a trash bag, and then you pulled the album out of the album sleeve.
It's very strange, but
yeah, very cool,
creative. But to get back to this album, you remember when this came out, and I remember when this came out and being like, so I'm a few years younger than you. I was 14 when this came out, and my big take, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, my thinking at that time was, fuck your parents' music. Why are you listening to your parents' music? We got so much great shit coming out now. This is ours. And now, of course, that I'm 44, all I listen to is shit that was released in the 70s and 80s, other than the stuff that I listened to for the show. So, yeah, go fucking figure, I guess. But my thought process at the time when this came out was like, oh, this is ancient. And now, of course, I'm like, no, this was not that old. It was not that far between their last album and this. That was just 15, 16 years. That's not much time at all. So it must have been pretty cool for people that were fans at the time for them to reunite 15 years later, but it seemed like a bigger deal to me because it was like my whole lifespan.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this. The first concert that I ever went to was a Robert Plant concert.
Oh, cool.
In the Spectrum. Yeah, I was like 11 or 12 years old. And this came out, I think, in October of '94, so I was just out of high school when this came out.
Okay.
And what really drew me to it, and what really drew me to this band is the evolution, right? They were restless in the sense that they never did the same thing twice. I mean, you can make an argument that the first 2 records are pretty similar, but we also have to remember that they released the first 4 records inside of like 2.5 years, right? So that's like just a breathtaking and sweeping accomplishment there. At any rate, obviously we don't want to get bogged down there, but like they moved. They were always on the move, doing something different. And Robert solo careers like that, and even when they came back to do this, I was really impressed with it because it wasn't like a Led Zeppelin cover band. They reimagined all these songs, and they played them in ways that, in 1994, I was, sort of like freaked out by and also mesmerized by, and now as an older guy, I'm like, yeah, of course they did that. Of course they did that, right? Why would you want to get back together and do the same stuff? I mean, I read something a little while ago. At one point in time in like the early 70s, Jethro Tull was on tour with Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And, they called them Jethro Dull because they played their songs the way that they were on the record. And then, like, Led Zeppelin, they lived and died by the sword. They were always exploring and experimenting, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it famously didn't work, but they were always willing to take that risk. And I think that, this record, No Quarter, reflects that.
And they also offered some new songs here to people, which is pretty cool. So I feel like I should ask you, which I didn't prep you for this, sorry, but I'm curious what your favorite re-recorded track is, or like new version of an older Led Zeppelin song is, and I'm curious what your favorite original, like, new song for this album is. So let's do one at a time, whichever one comes to your mind first.
Yeah, so I think that my favorite re-recorded song, I have two of them floating around. I thought that reimagining of No Quarter was fantastic, but also what blew my mind is one of my least favorite Zeppelin tunes is Nobody's Fault But Mine.
Okay.
And this version is incredible.
Nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine. Try to raise my soul to life. Nobody's fault but mine. Got a Bible in my home. Got a Bible in my home. Try to raise my soul to life. Nobody's fault but mine. Yeah.
It is just slower, it's dronier, and Robert Plant's voice sounds incredible. It's about as strong as it ever was, and it may have been the last time that he sounded like that powerful. Again, I don't like the recorded version of that song, and it sounds more like who wrote that song originally? Is that Blind Lemon Jefferson?
Let's see, I got it in front of me. It's Blind Willie Johnson.
Blind Willie Johnson. Okay, damn it, Shawn.
Damn it, Shawn.
If you ever hear that version, and anybody listening ever, like, if you want to hear an incredible rendition of that song, go listen to the original one. That guy's voice, he sounds like Satan is yelling at him. His voice is so freaking powerful. And I always thought, like, the studio version of Nobody's Fault But Mine, which is on that album Presence, was just sort of like, like almost like prog rock, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
The highlight of that song, let's put it this way, the highlight of that song on the recorded version is the harmonica solo that Plant offers. But this version, like, the band is loose, there's like a drone going on, and Robert Plant's voice sounds incredible. I mean, it's like hypnotic.
There's a theme, like, running through this whole album. It's like, did these dudes just get back from vacation in India? Like, what the fuck is going on? Because this is world music, right? There's definitely like a real world music kind of influence, particularly, like, I would guess, South Asian of some kind. And that droning, right? That's like that kind of, like, there's all these like hand drums and sound to me like Eastern instruments. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a sitar or not necessarily. I'm not good enough at identifying that kind of thing by ear, but there's definitely a lot going on there that is not traditional rock and roll, which is great. I mean, I agree. Like, it's really freshens up this shit.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so exciting to hear, these just new versions of these songs. Like, they could have very easily packaged this as, and I'm not putting anybody down, but like the Rolling Stones coming out again to play Satisfaction. They could have done that. And they just didn't do that. I mean, let's be fair. There are a couple examples, but even there, we can talk about that later. Even those few examples that sort of resemble, like, we're going to get the band back together. Like, even those things have some new layers about them.
Yeah, sure. My favorite track on here, and I'll just pick, well, I guess I could pick an original, a new one too, but my favorite one that's on Led Zeppelin 3, I like That's the Way on here.
Oh, yeah.
Play with you no more. I don't know how I'm going to do what Mama friend, the boy next door.
That's a song that, like, the original is good, but I kind of glossed over it for much of my life, even though that is one of the albums that I'll go to. It just never really grabbed me before, but listening to the album, this version, the last few days, I'm like, yeah, this is the one that to me is like a real bright spot on the album. Maybe it's partly because it's a little bit later in the album, and I kind of, first few listens, since I was listening to it on YouTube, I was like listening to it for a while, and these are some long songs too, so I kind of like, I listened to like the first half of the album a few times and didn't get to the end for whatever reason. I came back and like heard that, and I'm like, oh man, I've been sleeping on this. This is a great song.
Yeah, that end of the record, it's so orchestral, and it definitely has that Eastern feel about it. And you know, it's really incredible when you think those songs were written when these guys were young kids, listening to a lot of folk music, a lot of blues music, and then it just like it ends with "That's the Way," "Four Sticks," "Friends," and "Kashmir." And it's just incredible to hear how easily those compositions lended themselves to that sort of Eastern influence.
Yeah, they definitely line up well, and I wonder how much of that was intentional in the choosing of those songs to play with, or if they played with a whole bunch of songs and found that those ones worked together and, very deliberately chose them. I'd be curious to know that.
Yeah. Now, my favorite new composition, so I think three of them are sort of okay, right? That The City Don't Cry, Truth Explodes, and Wah Wah.
Yeah, Wah Wah being the one that wasn't on the original American version.
Yeah, right. But they're like droney and sort of improvised. I think they're performing. Two of them are just like in a street corner somewhere with some local musicians, which is really awesome. Apparently, Robert Plant knew a waitress at this restaurant, and they, called this waitress to find some like local street Moroccan musicians, and they just set up and they just jammed with these guys, and they recorded it.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like fucking jam band shit. And I mean that in a nice way. Like, it sounds like they're just dudes making this up on the fly.
You can tell they're having a great time doing it, right? I think that pulls through as well.
Yeah.
And then there's that other one. I can't remember which one it is, but they're playing in a street corner, but in front of a giant crowd with a drum machine. And it's just Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. And I forget which tune it is, but it's one of the new ones.
Yala?
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Wonderful One?
Now, Wonderful One is my favorite of the composition.
So throw it down, Cleveland rain. The queen of love has flown again to seek her daughter, who must lie beside the thief, whose golden tongues you will believe defies the order.
So Wonderful One they played at the concert with Since I've Been Loving You and Rain Song and That's the Way. I think Wonderful One is the best composition that's new of the four new ones.
It's really, really strong. It's really good. And it feels classic in its own way too. Like, it kind of feels like it could have been from back in the day. It's really fresh songwriting, but it sounds like classic Led Zeppelin at the same time.
Yeah, and it struck me when I was watching it again this morning, like when they're done with it, like they both sort of embrace, because it's so well received and it's a brand new composition. It made me feel good. Like that's a human thing, right? Like,
yeah,
that bond, that relationship that those guys developed, there was something that was still there, something that was still authentic. Because I think one of the things we've got to remember about how these guys came together is these aren't high school kids that were in a rock band together, right? This was a very intentional project that Jimmy Page put together, like almost like, build your own, model.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, reading the origin story, it's not as organic as a lot of the other bands. And I think what they did develop, though, is a legitimate organic relationship. Because it's not like Jimmy Page wrote everything and had this guy sing it. He lucked out. They lucked out, for sure, finding each other. But it was like really nice to see that embrace. Like they felt that the crowd felt it.
And clearly these two must have some sort of special connection besides just kind of being the most famous names for the band, for them to have been the ones to get back together and do this whole thing rather than having the whole band do it. I don't know enough about Led Zeppelin's history as to why they broke up or if it was bitter or what, or why the other guys weren't involved here. Do you know?
Yeah. Their drummer died on September 25th, 1980. They were practicing for a tour and another record.
What's John Bonham?
Bonham.
He died. Oh, okay. So he died, and then they were like, okay, we're done.
They released a statement. So they
we can't do it.
He became a really, really bad alcoholic, and he was drinking like 40 or 50 or 60 shots of vodka a day.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah, and they were at a practice getting ready, and you remember like at the end of their career, like the Sex Pistols were out there, like all this like new music was coming out, the Police were out there,
sure,
and they were considered sort of like old, I think unfairly old dinosaurs, because their last couple of records sound nothing like their earliest records. Like they really, really did some incredible stuff at the end. And also John Bonham was intimidated by Neil Peart from Rush.
Mm-hmm.
And like he was like sort of down on himself. They had a band practice. He drank 1,000,000 vodkas and he went to sleep and he drowned in his own vomit. Man, the guy.
Oh, shit. Yeah, classic rock and roll way to go out.
Yeah, I think it's where you get like Keith Moon and John Bonham. That's where you get the what's the English comedy troupe?
Monty Python?
Monty Python. Don't they have that movie where all the drummers die? Or what is that?
Oh no, you're thinking of Spinal Tap. That was Rob Reiner.
I'm sorry, yeah. Right.
And Christopher Guest, I think, was the only actual Brit there.
Okay. Yeah, but I think they did the right thing. They broke up because they didn't want to go on without their guy, their friend. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was the right thing to do, right? They could have plugged them in and packaged a program, and they became effectively the best Led Zeppelin cover band, but they didn't.
Did John Paul Jones then be like, in 94, was he just like, I thought we said we weren't going to do it without John, so I'm not doing it?
So here's the story. This is some pretty awful stuff. So they named the album No Quarter.
Mm-hmm.
No Quarter is a song that John Paul Jones effectively composed where he shows off his keyboard capabilities. So they call it No Quarter. They play a new version of No Quarter. They don't invite this guy, but they never even bothered to call him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, John Paul Jones was there with them, and he actually made this little quip. He said something along the lines of, "Thanks, fellas, I'm glad you remembered my phone number this time." Now, the way the Page and Plant experiment came together, Jimmy Page had just recorded a record with David Coverdale from Whitesnake.
Oh, that's right, Coverdale Page. I remember that.
Yeah, and it sounded suspiciously like the end of the Led Zeppelin's career, right, that last Into the Outdoor album. And Jimmy Page they were performing in Tokyo shortly, and Page stopped off in Boston because he heard that Plant was playing, and Robert Plant had been contacted by MTV to do an Unplugged. I don't know how this was coordinated. I don't know if it was just happenstance or just like fortuitous circumstances, or if there was some kind of coordination. But for whatever reason, because as one does, Jimmy Page went to Boston before he went to Tokyo, and they met up, and then Robert Plant decided to do the Unplugged with Jimmy Page. They didn't want to bring John Paul Jones in because they didn't want to then have to bring in John Bonham's son and then make it an actual reunion. They just wanted to do something a little different and not have the pressure of a full reunion.
So Unledded then is a play both on Unplugged and the fact we're not Led Zeppelin.
Yes, exactly.
Huh. I can still see John Paul Jones being like, what the fuck, though, but okay.
Oh, yeah. When it came out, I remember reading in Bass Player magazine, he was like, I'm watching TV one day, and then suddenly there's Jimmy and I think they called Robert Plant Percy. There's Jimmy and Percy and some bloke playing on my bass lines.
Oh, that must have stung.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we're getting into the dirt, then it seems like an appropriate time to ask you, what's your least favorite song in this album?
It's easy. That's so easy. I don't think there's any bad stuff on here except that rendition of Black Dog.
Hey, mama, said the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you cry. Child, said the way you sweat, gonna make you burn, gonna make you stay. Child, when you walk that way, watch your honey drip, I can't keep away. Stand still, got a flaming heart.
which I didn't hear because it's not really on the American version.
Yeah, so it's worth checking out just because, you know, they hit all these high marks, right? Like Black Dog, he doesn't play the riff, you know.
Oh, well, shit.
It's just this weird, like, sound that they make. It's almost like they like rearranged the Whole Lotta Love riff to make it like less powerful. I don't know. It's a rare miss for me. It's one that if I never hear it again, I'll be fine with that. So that's definitely at the very bottom for me. The next one up would be, and it's not bad, but you know, I could live without the rendition of What Is and What Should Never Be. I think it's a little sloppy.
Another one that's not on the list that I'm looking at. I mean, are you sure that's on the album, like the actual album?
I looked up the YouTube version of it, whatever. I don't. Again, I have the CD and I have the DVD in my attic, and I have no way to use them anymore. So.
I guess we should have talked about this. I should have said, "Hey, let's use the Wikipedia version," because that's the only track listing I have here. But I guess I thought you would. I thought you had like the CD.
So you don't have Black Dog or What Is and What Should Never Be?
No, those were not on the. I mean, like according to Wikipedia, the track listing for this original version of the album is "Nobody's Fault But Mine," "Thank You," "No Quarter," "Friends," "Yalla," "City Don't Cry," "Since I've Been Loving You," "Battle of Evermore," "Wonderful One," "That's the Way," "Gallows Pole," "Four Sticks," and "Cashmere."
Oh, so good. They're all so good. That singer that replaced Sandy Denny from, what was that, Fairport Convention? Is that what she was in?
For the Battle of Evermore?
Yeah, that's another one of those songs where they put that Eastern influence in there, and there's a full like orchestral arrangement going on. It sounds incredible.
And this was shortly after the single soundtrack. And part
of
me,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And part of me wonders if they were like, well, that's not as good as, you know, we can, that was good, but we could do better. Because, you know what I mean? It just seems like kind of a random song to have chosen out of the entire discography of these guys. Just seemed like maybe they were like, oh shit, we can't have that be the final version that everyone likes, you know, because it's a really good version.
It's a fantastic version. In fact, when that movie came out, and, you know, like Alice in Chains has that scene in the movie, you know, like the Pearl Jam song for the soundtrack's fantastic.
Both of them, yep.
Was that State of Love and Trust and
Breathe, yeah.
Or
Breath.
Both of those, or Breath, yeah, both of those songs are so good. At any rate, I remember people like in my inner circle were like, do you hear this new Heart song, Battle of Evermore? It's incredible. I remember saying, oh, no. That's a great song and it's a great cover, but it's not a Heart song. That's a Led Zeppelin song.
All right, well, I mean, I'm not going to pick a least favorite song from the album because I didn't grow up with it. I don't feel like I've got the right to say that necessarily. But, yeah, I guess I'll have to check those songs out later and see if I don't like them either.
Now, so, like, again, like, What Is and What Should Never Be sounds fine. It totally sounds fine. But they didn't add anything to it. They didn't do anything new. They played the parts verbatim. And, you know, it's not the best. The best version of that song is obviously the second track on Led Zeppelin 2.
I'm going to guess that what I'm looking at this track listing is like the album version, like the list, you know, the CD that you could buy. But you were used to listening to and watching the DVD, which is probably much longer. And there's probably a reason the songs that you're naming were not chosen to be on the CD version, is my guess. Right? I mean, it seems logical. I don't know if that's true or not. Don't quote me on it, but it sounds logical to me.
You know, if you get into like all of the other songs that stick to the traditional arrangement, like most of them don't stick to the arrangement. They sound nothing like the album version. But if you look at like even Cashmere or Since I've Been Loving You or the Rain song, they stick to the traditional arrangement, but they have an orchestra involved. Right? So there's some form of evolution. There's some form of movement. Like the What Is and What Should Never Be is like they got the band back together and they played a song that they recorded. You know what's incredible? They recorded that song. Page was 50 and Plant was 46.
Wow.
Yeah, which is incredible to me. Like, I'm 48 right now, and I thought, you know, just those guys, you know, they recorded those songs, my God, 22, 24 years ago, depending on what we're looking at, from their point in time. But all of them add something, with the exception of that What Is and What Should Never Be. And I guess you could say the same for Thank You. You heard that version on there?
Yeah, that version's the second song on the CD version. So
it sounds nice, but it's effectively like they just performed the studio version.
If the sun refused to shine, I would still be loving you. If mountains crumble to the sea, baby, there would still be you and me.
Yeah, that one sounds a lot like the original.
Yeah, and so that's the same thing with Buddhism, which never, but just a little messier to me. But
gotcha.
all in all, though, like, this is an incredible performance, and I love that they're in Morocco, right? They're in Wales. They do a concert in London, and so if you're watching this show, it's not a single concert. So orally, you're hearing all of these things that are incredible, and visually, some of this, like, dare I say, some of the cinematography is pretty impressive. It's almost like they have a drone going up a mountain until you see the band, and there they are performing these songs. A handful of them, like When the Levee Breaks, and Nobody's Fault But Mine, and No Quarter. And then you're in the streets of Morocco, then you're in a crowd in Morocco, and then you're, the mountains of Wales, you're in a club in London. I mean, it's so cool, and I think that it's just reflective of the journey that those guys were always on. It's an echo of that 1972 journey that they actually had through Morocco, which eventually inspired them to write Kashmir several years later.
Oh, okay. So I guess when you're a rich rock star, you get to travel the world and just soak up influences and be awesome. Nice for them. It pays out for all of us too. I mean, they made some great music back then, and they're able to come back and make great music together again and play with stuff. So what do you think is the underrated song on this album?
That's a really good question. I mean, if I had to pick an underrated version, I would say When the Levee Breaks. Here's why I say that. When the Levee Breaks is famous for its drum line, right? The Beastie Boys sample. It's perhaps one of the most heavily sampled drum lines of all time. You hear the drum line, you know what's coming. And it's from the Led Zeppelin 4 is probably played out for most people, but like if you can imagine hearing it for the first time in 1971, no one had ever heard anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they did not lean on that drum line. What you get instead is like this bizarre hurdy-gurdy going on underneath this bizarre guitar drone. They don't even use the guitar riff, let alone the drum line. It's just this weird drone, and it's also in a different key, and it's a different riff, and I don't think they even change parts. I think it's the same. I think the original song, I think, is in F with a capo, although most people play it in E because it's easier. But I think they may be in A. That's what it sounds like to my ear. And so it makes the vocal performance a little different. Mm-hmm. And he sounds just like Nobody's Fault But Mine. Robert Plant sounds incredible, and the band just sounds hypnotic, right? It's like if The Cure from the Disintegration era decided to do a blues, right?
That sounds great.
Oh, speaking of which, they have Pearl Thompson is playing banjo with them, right?
Well,
from The Cure.
That's very... Oh, he is?
Yeah, he's in the whole record.
Oh, he is? I didn't realize that. I didn't see that. That's very cool. Another one I'll have to check out later that I didn't get to hear When the Levee Breaks. But yeah, I'll check that out. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also wondering, like, as I speculate for reasons why this album is not easily accessible, maybe they want people to watch and listen to it. Maybe that was just like part of the whole point for them, that they are showing you all this stuff. The cinematography is good, as you say. Maybe that was kind of on their mind, is like, yeah, you want to listen to it, buy the fucking DVD or the Blu-ray, which is probably available, I would hope.
When that album came out, it was promoted on MTV. Remember when MTV used to play music?
Oh, yeah, we all do. We reminisce about that often here on 93,
there are
94.
some really good unplugged, man. That Sting unplugged is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
That Pearl Jam unplugged is incredible.
Alice in Chains. There's a lot of them.
Oh yeah, it was so cool to see that stuff, to see these bands sort of stripped down and intimate. But I remember I was in some band at the time, and everybody that I hung out with was either a musician or someone that was totally into music. And we all went down into the basement of this dude, I think it was Todd Bunting's house. And there were like 30 of us. There's 30 kids that just graduated high school like 6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Or 4 months ago, right? That's not October, we graduated in June. And you could hear a freaking pin drop. And when the commercials came, it was like 1,000 conversations happening. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Like, it was mind-blowing. It was an incredible experience to witness it. Not exactly live, obviously, but to witness the experience, like the broadcast on TV. Mm-hmm. It may have been a 2-hour broadcast, given the generosity, we'll say, of the commercial space that MTV used to offer. But I can't imagine 30, post-high school graduates sitting in a room and being deadly quiet listening to something.
Maybe if it was anime now.
Without this stuff, without
without a phone.
Texting the person right next to them while they're watching the same thing.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about this album before we move on?
I think anyone listening, if you have not heard or seen this performance, it's really worth it. It's not a cover band. It's not them, rehashing and reliving the glory days. They only did it because they felt that they had some form of artistic value to add to the experience. And I think that they elevated it with the visual aspect to it. And the orchestras as well. There's an Egyptian orchestra. I saw them twice when they went on tour.
Yeah.
And they brought that orchestra with them. That they had. Oh my goodness, it did sound incredible.
You saw them twice as Plant and Page, Unledded?
Yeah.
That's lucky. That's cool.
Yeah. I saw them in, I don't know the years, 94 and 96 or 94 and 95. They came around twice in quick succession. Huh. And I probably saw them on that Walking into Clarksdale tour. There's no way that I wouldn't have seen them. I've seen Plant a bunch of times.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on talking Led Zeppelin with me. I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit now. I've gotten into the habit of creating little trivia games for my guests lately.
Oh. You're going to display my ignorance?
I don't think so, because you, sir, are a historian of the American Revolution, and you are a lover of music. So I'm going to ask you about some founding fathers and whether or not they played an instrument. Bonus points if you can name the instrument.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So you'll tell me if this person's a musician or a non-musician. I'll never forget when I was in band when I was a kid, we were playing a talent show, and we were fucking around because we were in a punk band and just acting like bozos. And this goth synth band that was near us, we overheard them judging us. They're ugh, there's musicians and then there's non-musicians. And they gestured at us. So that's been a joke my whole life. So you tell me if these people are a musician or a non-musician and whether or not you know what instrument they play. Ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Thomas Jefferson.
TJ sang and played the violin.
He sang and played the violin. Very good. 2 points. All right, yes, he was a renowned violin player. Governor Morris.
Oh. Did he play the drums with his peg leg?
Probably not, being that he had one leg. I guess you could still play the drums.
If I had to guess, a super, super rich character like that, I would say that he would have some kind of organ or something in his house, but I don't know.
That is very astute. The most I could find is that his wife owned a piano.
Okay.
But there's no record of him playing anything. So, all right, good. We'll take that as a non-musician, which you're correct. He owned a piano, an organ-type instrument, but was not known
and
for
by the way,
playing.
that would have been a status
thing. Oh, 100%, yeah. For what I saw, it's at I think the Nathan Hale Museum.
Do I get a point for the peg leg drum joke?
Absolutely.
Okay.
1.5.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Governor Morris lost with the bottom of one of his legs in a high-speed carriage chase.
Is that how he lost it?
I don't want to say it was a chase, but it was a carriage accident. Yeah.
He was fucking around in a carriage.
Yeah. Man.
All right. John Adams.
Non-musician.
That is correct. Although John Quincy Adams played the flute. John Adams. It sounds right. Like John Adams. It's hard to imagine him getting joy out of anything. Let alone
there's no joy
playing an instrument.
His son, John Quincy Adams.
Very different guy.
Miserable, right?
Huh?
John Quincy Adams. I'm paraphrasing here. So John Adams has the great quote, and I'm not quoting, paraphrasing. He says, "I need to learn the art of war and politics so that my sons can learn the art of architecture, so that my grandsons can learn art and literature." So he knew he wasn't an artist.
Yeah.
But John Quincy Adams also has, when he's running against Andrew Jackson again in 1828, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, I recognize that most humans don't like me because I'm not very fun. And Andrew Jackson's fun.
Yeah, well, Andrew Jackson also had horse reins made out of human flesh, so fuck him.
Yeah, I mean, what's not fun about Indian genocide? Oh, wait, everything.
Everything.
Yeah, literally everything.
Literally everything. Let's get to someone cooler. Benjamin Franklin.
So I don't know off the top of my head if he played anything, but I'm going to absolutely say he was a musician.
You are correct. He was a musician. He invented the glass harmonica and played that. He played the harp. And get this, motherfucker played the guitar.
Is there something that he didn't do?
Not fuck strange women?
No, he did that.
That's what I'm saying. He did not fuck strange women.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
He got around.
That guy, he did it all.
He did it all. He was something else. John Jay.
Oh, he's an uptight, rich New Yorker. He had some kind of lessons. I don't know off the top of my head, but So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to make a wager here. I would not imagine that he was a musician, but I would argue that his class and pedigree, he had to have played something.
Well, I found no record of him playing anything. It's certainly possible that he did, but I couldn't find anything on it. So We'll say non-musician. That is pretty much where you landed on that. But he may have been forced to, as a kid, play the piccolo or some shit.
That totally makes sense, because if you ever read his papers, like, he's another guy that, like, he's John Adams without the fun that John Adams and there's not a lot of fun there, right?
Oh, Lord.
Like, at least John Adams yelled, right? Like, John Jay didn't. There's nothing fun about John Jay. He's brilliant for sure.
Sure.
But, like, so is John Adams.
Right.
Like, John Adams yelled about stuff and he had self-doubt and he was arrogant and then he failed and he assessed himself.
He had ego.
Total ego. John Jay was like an intellectual Hannibal Lecter, right? Like,
oh, Lord.
Calm, collected. His blood pressure never raised no matter what was going on. You know?
All right. How about James Madison?
So there's another one that I don't know off the top of my head that he played anything, but he's a Southern gentleman. So he would have been expected to play something. And again, whether or not he's a musician is beside the point.
Well, I mean, I guess not just like knowing how to play something because you were forced to as a kid. Like, did this person consider themselves a musician? Did they play it for their own joy and entertainment as a grown-up, is what I'm asking.
You're going to blow my mind if I'm wrong. By reading Madison's papers and being pretty intimate with his intellect and the way that he thought about the world, I think that he's a guy that would have dabbled with an instrument but was not an artist. So I'll say no. I'll say non-musician. You
are so dead on all of these. So he was not known as a musician. He was famously gifted a flute by the glassmaker Charles Laurent that Lizzo played recently, a couple years ago or something. It was a big deal. But yeah, not known for playing an instrument despite being gifted this famous flute.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me.
Francis Hopkinson. I'm going to leave this whole pause in.
I don't know enough about him. He's in my book.
He's a New Jerseyite or New Jerseyan or New Jergander, whatever the fuck you people call yourselves. What do you guys call yourselves?
New Jerseyans.
That's terrible.
Dirty Jersey.
Francis Hopkinson.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Francis Hopkinson was a striver, was a guy trying to move up. I'm going to say that he was a musician, if for no other reason than it added to the illusion of cultivation.
He played the harpsichord and the organ. He was a keys man. Look at you. You've not gotten a single one wrong this whole time. I'm impressed.
All right, Sean. Every once in a while.
There's 2 left because I always do 9 in honor of my other podcast. Yeah. Well, sorry. We're almost done. John Dickinson.
Oh, that guy was too sick to play an instrument.
That is correct. He did not play an instrument. Not known for playing instruments. Good. And lastly...
Can I just say real quick, Dickinson, if you ever want to get a good laugh, John Adams has some great assessments of these men during the gathering of the First Continental Congress.
Mm-hmm.
He says, John Dickinson is he's gray as ash on the verge of death. A shadow of a man.
Yeah, not in good health.
No, definitely not. Too sick to play.
That is correct. Lastly, but not leastly, the famous orator who wasn't, Patrick Henry.
Oh yeah, he's a fiddle player.
He's a fiddle player. Very good. You got so many. You got them all right, and you even knew a couple of the instruments. You even knew some of the instruments that they didn't play, as in the case of Governor Morris. So, well done, sir. You have made a clean sweep of founding fathers, musicians, non-musicians. Good job.
Is there a paper in there somewhere?
Of course there is, and you're going to write it. You're going to text me in like 2 months. It's going to be published in the Journal of the American Revolution, like everything else you write.
Oh, this was great, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you, especially to get to talk to you about history and music. It's been great, man. It's awesome getting to talk to you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you as well, man. Great. And I look forward to doing this again, even if it's not for the show, man. I like our Zoom talks.
Yeah. We should do this sooner than later, even if we don't do an episode.
Let's talk about it, man.
Awesome.
Straight a smile from someone who's good now. It's very easy just to
I am very thankful to Shawn for coming back on the show again. He's a good friend, and it's awesome to be able to continue these conversations with him from afar, the conversations that we used to have when I lived in Philadelphia, and we would cross paths in person as opposed to just over machine. I am, as always, looking for new guests to come on the show. If that's a thing that you're interested in, or maybe you know somebody that would be interested in doing it. If you're looking for suggestions as far as albums go that you might be able to do. We just talked about an Unplugged album. Another Unplugged album from 1993 that was pretty great. A cassette I had that I would love to be able to talk about was Neil Young's Unplugged album.
Behind the stars. Sky, throwing shadows on our eyes, leave us helpless, helpless, helpless.
We're listening here to Helpless from that, which was a really strong album. So it'd be cool to be able to talk about that with somebody, or, you know, any other album from the era. I am not that picky. I will do almost any album from the era, as I've said on the show before. So long as I haven't already done them before and they're not Cypress Hill, I'll do it. That's pretty much it. So reach out to me at 9394podcast@gmail.com, or just write and say hi, you know, that you like the show. That'd be cool. Or better yet, you could rate and review the show on Apple or Spotify. That is very helpful for me as a content creator. I have no desire or interest in being like a big podcast, but I still like getting, you know, listeners. And the ratings and the reviews help that. If you just can't get enough of me here and you want more of me, you can find me at 2 other podcasts that I have. Small Screen Sessions, which is a TV show podcast. We're currently talking about the HBO show Watchmen from 2019 with my friends Steve and Amanda. Or you can find me over at Cinema 9 Podcast with my friends Mike and Eric. We take on different movies every week. And that is about the long and short of it today, folks. Yeah, that's it. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Is there something else? I feel like I'm forgetting something. All right, whatever. Goodbye. 9394, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.